and now the gully's this small and the whole road's taken out. So we really wanted to be thorough, because that's what you guys deserve, and there was no way I could sleep at night if we weren't as thorough as I was. So let's get rolling on this.
Uh-oh.
There you go.
There we go. All right, so this was really a watershed scale or watershed wide assessment. We're looking, at the whole watershed, not just, what's directly next to the lake. We're scouring the whole, all sectors. Like Bevan mentioned, we're looking at roads, streams, lake shores, and then all of the large parcels that exist across the watershed. So we're looking at roads because they intercept streams and waterways, and they are, we have known they are pretty erosive and vulnerable to, inputting those sediments into our streams. And the streams, are conveyors of sediment and also, have accelerated process of erosion, putting those sediments into the lake. So we're looking at streams because they convey those sediments. We're also looking at lake shores because of the increased pressures of development, and then also, those are also susceptible to erosion as well. With all this water coming across the landscape, we've seen the impacts. And also, regular erosion from the lake itself, wind push and ice push and whatnot. And then lastly, we covered these large parcels of land, working lands like agricultural farms, forested logging operations, because there are large parcels, the land use is there and there are opportunities, as well as it's really easy to work with one landowner versus, and on one project with one grant instead of across a bunch of little different projects and parcels. So it's nice to really, thank you. Okay, great. And we went back already. Wrong buttons. Yeah, so we scoured the landscape, put some dots on the map, that's what I like to call it. You go out, you put a bunch of dots on the map, some lines, capturing gullies. We're really trying to find those areas of erosion, following those sediment sources all the way up a watershed, seeing what their source is, and thoroughly documenting them. So every single dot you see is, either a stream crossing, an erosive feature on the landscape, a gully, trash in the streams, like invasive species, all sorts of things. And sometimes things aren't able to be put in these nice boxes, and then we have these really long descriptions for potential project types. And this is a really awesome shot we got after the second July flood over our most recent implemented project on Valley Road. We were able to decommission a farm and farm road and really improve wetland and floodplain activity. You can see the extent of the flood here. We were able to improve connectivity of the floodplain and get water out. And this was a very important area for flood waters to be stored before rushing down to the lake. So these are the kind of projects that we're looking to obtain. We're trying to build flood resiliency back into these habitats so that we don't have things unravel like they did on these really intense floods. But sometimes we can't really prevent that or project it. So this cool. So we got those dots on the map, lines on the map, but what actually constitutes an actual project? What is it that drives us to create a project summary? And that is the opportunity for that project to be eligible for grant funding. So our project, the LWAP process is actually a product of the Clean Water the Clean Water programs. We have to follow these, which is through the Clean Water Initiative Program funding policy. We have to follow these policies to develop projects that fit really nicely into these buckets of discrete sectors of project types. So we've got natural resource projects, which include riparian buffer plantings, lakeshore stabilization projects, floodplain and stream restoration projects, as well as wetland restoration projects, dam removal, stabilization of forest roads. Another sectors are stormwater projects. Those are on developed lands that are greater than 3 acres, and as well as town and private roads. Unfortunately, no state highways, because those are beholden to different regulations, and we can't get funding for those because they would have their own pot. And then lastly, agricultural projects. Those are things like barnyard stormwater runoff mitigation, and then riparian buffer plantings along those drainages that are on the properties. So here's a few examples. This is the Valley Brook Restoration Project that I was talking about in the last picture. This is what the farm and the barnyard area looked like beforehand. This was after the first flood last year in July, and then this is our aftermath of our excavated floodplains. I forgot I have this. me back up so you can see everything. We've got excavated floodplain areas, we decommissioned a road, so these are all really awesome things. We've got other projects like lakeshore restoration, infiltration steps, infiltration gardens here. Northwoods is amazing at putting these together, so if you're interested, Meg's in the room, Meg Carter, right there, raise your hand, she's amazing. And then lastly, here's another example of a stormwater project that we completed in Newport. So these are the potential projects, that we're going for. They fit into these, nice buckets. We're able to get funding for them. So that's how we, yes, question?
Just to be clear, the slide says less than 3 acres. You're talking stormwater project?
Oh, sorry.
Less than.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you for correcting me. All right, so those are all the types of projects we're kind of going after. Let's start with each of our, discrete sectors that we kind of focused on. So we've got our lake shoreline assessments. What we did was went out on each lake, scoured the entire lake shore on a boat, and put down points on a map of areas that we, had increased erosion, opportunities to stabilize that erosive shoreland bank, areas where we could put in a buffer, improve the natural community on those shorelands, stabilizing them with trees, and widening a no-mow zone. These are all little things that we could do. We put all those points in the map, we prioritized them, and gave that list to Bevan, and she's working with landowners to do outreach, to spread the good word of lake-wise and lakeshore best management practices. She was able to get 11 landowners to complete lake-wise assessments. I think it's, 5 on Echo Lake, 4 of them received awards, and 1 with a recognition certificate, and then for Echo-Seymour we had 6 assessments completed, 3 of them resulting in lake-wise awards, and 3 of them resulting in certificates, so very exciting. You guys are warriors out there. I'm just always impressed to see how much work you guys are doing on your own to improve, or to be stewards and improve your, lakeshore property and improve water quality as well, so kudos to you all.
Oh, yeah.
All right, for stream walks and riparian assessments, we walked all, every perennial stream that we targeted. We walked intermittent streams and ephemeral streams, which were really, flowing this past year because of how much water was coming through. But we're also walking those streams to find those sediment inputs. We're looking for the plumes of sediment in the water. We're looking for any channels that are coming in that might be gullies. We're following them up and investigating to see what the sources are. So we proposed to walk 24.6 miles of streams, and we completed 32.4 miles. So we blew that out of the water, if you will.
Nice job.
Right? We scoured the landscape. It was actually very filling. And then we have these proposed geomorphic assessments, which are really thorough investigations of different streams. We proposed 5 miles of stream assessments, and then we got 5 miles, just under what we had proposed, just because there was so much that we ended up covering. So from all those stream walks, we scoured 200 plus individual properties, as well as identifying 186 stream crossings, culverts, bridges, and fords, documenting every single one of those. So lots of crossings going on, and we all know that a lot of those crossings are unstable or undersized culverts and can be really detrimental to a stream if they're not properly installed. And we're seeing that very quickly with all of these flood waters coming in. For private driveway and road assessments, we proposed 7 miles of assessments, and then we completed 13.3 miles, which covered 218 private driveway segments, which were all evaluated for erosion or drainage issues. So we're looking at roads, driveways, and private driveways all the same. We're looking to make sure that the road is shedding water in an appropriate way, there's no erosion. We're looking at if there's a crown of the road or if it's pitched in the appropriate way. We're also looking at the shoulders of the road to see if there's any greater berm or erosion happening there, disconnecting sheet flow into adjacent vegetation to be infiltrated, and instead of running down our roads and eroding them and looking like toad pond at the end of the day. And then we're also not only looking at the road surface in that area just up next to the road, we're looking at the ditches themselves as well. Those are all backwards. Those are all, conveyors of stormwater as well, and also are intercepting all of the water coming off of those really steep, slopes. So any small little drainages are all being conveyed into this one ditch system and cutting straight down the mountain, and wreaking havoc on all those little driveway culverts on the way. and overwhelming any other stream crossing structures in the process, as well as, you know, really not being able to handle the amount of water so the road gets, you know, eroded away as well. So we're looking at everything from the road surface to the outside of the road, because we're noticing that these are the real problems in the watershed.
You got a question here?
Yeah.
The places that you've identified, looking at it, can we find out if our road is one of the places that you've identified? Do you have a list?
We have a list of potential projects that floated to the top. These are areas where we can improve, you know, your private driveway or these private roads. Those are the ones that float to the top. They will be in our final report. So you can
But not every single one.
But not every single one. All the ones that had the opportunity to either, you know, improve road drainage by putting in, you know, a water bar, broad-based dip, improving the ditching, disconnecting any hydrologically connected driveways or private roads or roads from streams. So we don't want any of that runoff going directly into a stream. We want to disconnect them. So if
Okay,
your
right.
property
That
just
list,
floats to
yeah.
the top, it will be in this report.
I'll also add that we're happy to provide information if you request it of your own property. We're not just gonna give a bunch of fodder out there for people to talk about.
Exactly.
So if you have a question about your property, please reach out. We'd be happy to share if we have any observations from it. But unless, you know, we have to talk to DC about sharing all the data, but we do want to be sensitive about people's private
Yeah,
property.
so you can sign up on here, I have to tell people to put notes on the back, but you can also, Patrick, do you have your card out? You can-
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we'll do
can
that.
grab
Just
it.
grab one of our card and just give us that specific request, or if you can find out a way to write that in here on the sign, that would be great.
I do love that question though, that you brought it up. You do care a lot. You're like, is it one of mine, you know? So we will, if you're interested in that, please reach out. Okay, so we also cover,
While you're on the topic,
yeah,
in our case, actually, it wasn't that the stormwater, the culverts were too small or clogged, so they were humongous and they all went down into one place. Is that still? In other words, it's not like we need more culverts.
it depends on the location, I would
They were
say.
all pointed right down the driveway, which is now gone.
Okay,
And that work was just done last summer.
okay, yeah, so sometimes it's really just the fact that there's so much water on the landscape that we really just,
So would that qualify, is that the kind of thing you'd be looking at too, or?
That would, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Thank you.
Yep, great question.
It's basically anything that looks at all like a problem for us lay people. Is how you describe it?
Yeah.
It's like, that's
If it
why
looks
you.
pretty ugly and you're frowning at it, it's probably an issue.
Okay.
And if it's definitely running right into a stream, a water quality issue.
Two questions. You've obviously done a lot of assessing.
Yeah.
How about feedback to landowners?
Yeah.
Has that started or?
Yeah, so this is, during this whole process, as we're scouring the landscape, doing these assessments, we're trying to be as visible as possible. And if we do find an opportunity, we're walking right up to the door, trying to find, you know, knocking on the door, going in the back, going to see if anyone's home, you know, and if we don't find them right then and there, we go back, you know.
Raise your hand if you've seen us out and about or talk to us directly. So we're out there, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of you, and we're often here in the wintertime when the leaves drop, and that's when there are fewer people here. But Bevan has talked to
Some people do.
dozens of landowners.
Yeah, well, these are really great questions.
Yeah.
Really, yeah.
And I want to say something like 30 to 40% of our projects, we have obtained landowner support, which is really incredible. And thanks to Patrick. Yes.
Just really quickly, you touched on this, but I'm a little bit unclear.
Yeah.
How many times did you do these assessments? Have you been out there the 4 times since we've had these incidents?
Yeah,
since
Well,
last
that's
year?
that's
So-
when things are happening.
that's
Since
before
last
2016.
fall, yep, since last fall, well, and we work in the Morgan area because we complete a lot of projects out here. But we were out after every single flood, but we were also out in between, during that whole time from, you know, October last year all the way through, you know, this week, doing these assessments.
Right, because one thing you guys had to do is go back out. They were trying to wrap everything up for tonight,
Yeah.
and they had to go back out and scramble to kind of reevaluate things,
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a very big effort to get back out there constantly to resurvey. So we tried to be
That makes
you know,
sense.
very
Okay.
thorough. Yep.
On that map you showed earlier,
Which one?
all the red dots, so those problem areas necessarily? or
Not
just
necessarily.
Areas of interest?
Just, their
That's what I was
observations.
asking.
You know, whether it's a stream crossing, a ford, or, you know, it's just like, oh wow, this road looks great, you know? We assessed it, and it looks fine, you know?
So they're not necessarily
All-
problems?
They're not all problems, no.
Geotagging means you take a note?
We're just, yeah, we're just taking a
You're
note,
recording
we're making
data.
observation on the landscape, and then we go back and see those observations, and we pull out the ones that are problems, or,
Yeah.
you know, that
That's
have the
good.
potential to be remedied. Yep. Great question.
Yeah.
Sorry if that wasn't clear.
So, no, it's just
All
complicated.
right. Any more questions?
I
All right, we'll keep moving until we have some more. All right, so like I said, for private driveways and private roads, we really thoroughly assessed the whole road surface and the shoulders and ditching as well. So we completed 3.9 miles of town road assessments, and then 22.7 miles of private road assessments, covering 415 road segments screened for erosion and any drainage issues. We also, you know, we weren't beholden to covering any of the state roads because they have their own, you know, regulation and monitoring tied to it. But we, you know, still were pretty thorough on 111 and all those roads as well. Any stream crossings were thoroughly documented and actually flagged for a few projects as well. And, you know, we weren't just not going to observe it, so we did.
Okay.
All right, and then here is a kind of a nice picture of all of our project types. We can see that roads really stand out, and this is roads at 29%, and then we also have for road implementation projects, and then for road design projects, we also have 12% here. So we can see roads are a big issue, or a big opportunity to address for clean water improvements. Following that, we have buffer planting and floodplain and stream restoration, and then below that we have lakeshore, and then agricultural, trash cleanup, wetland restoration, and invasive species, and then we found one potential dam removal as well. This is a very horrible picture at the bottom of Water Street, so.
Yeah, where's, okay.
Just trying to
Right.
keep us moving.
Yep.
This is a horrible picture of our prioritization matrix. I don't even want you to try to look at this. And it goes down 94 projects.
Yep.
We are, you know, collecting all this data. We are trying to look at, you know, everything from water quality benefits to cost feasibility to O&M, like what will it take for this project to move forward, and then also stay functioning, and how much money goes into that, and then also like landowner support and buy-in, as well as all the co-benefits that will go along with these projects. So there are, you know, very qualitative measurements that we're, things that we're collecting, like phosphorus reduction values. We're calculating those using the DEC interim phosphorus calculator. We're calculating things like, you know, drainage area size, the amount of impervious surfaces within that area, and, you know, other things like, there were qualitative factors that we're also bringing in, like co-benefits. You know, is this going to improve any type of habitat, fish habitat, lakeshore habitat? Is it an educational opportunity? Do we have landowner buy-in? Do, you know, that kind of stuff. So these are those prioritization criteria. Like I mentioned, we've got, you know, some points that we assign based on our water quality benefits, a few points for our landowner support, some cost feasibility points, operations and maintenance and longevity points, and then our co-benefits that, you know, really kind of help round the project out to, you know, account for all those other benefits that we actually are able to obtain.
And we can bring that slide up again when we're all chatting, right? I think we did that before.
Yeah, this
That'd
is
be
really
great,
helpful.
just to remind you guys of like how we do the scoring. Yeah,
Yeah, okay, great.
be good.
And this is all available.
Yeah.
Yes.
Provide
all
all links to all of this. You'll have a lot of too much information.
Yeah.
This is, one of our deliverables, and we tag it on to literally everything. It was revised in July, and we have, you know, tagged it onto everything. So this is very much available.
Is that through a website or?
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
share links with the associations and the towns too,
Yeah.
Thanks.
So,
and on our websites, organization.
All the slides.
yeah. Everything will be provided to you guys. It would be much a shame if it just sat on a computer or on a shelf.
Yeah, and if you do sign up on the sign-in sheet, we can definitely we usually just do a full follow-up email. I'm recording, we'll give you access to all the slides so you can review them again. So make sure you do sign in, or just grab a card and email us.
All right, so these are all of our project priorities by location and type. You can see all the different types of project, from agricultural pollution prevention all the way to wetland restoration, and they're all the different phases of project implementation, from preliminary design through implementation. So depending on what we thought the project would be, like kind of in that phase, if it was a really complex project, it's probably going to design. If it's something really simple, like a buffer planting, we can go straight to implementation. Some of them are real big head scratchers, so we had to put them in that, that design bucket. And you can see they're color coordinated, and you can see they're really distributed across the landscape. You know, clusters up here. Toad Pond has a lot of dots. Lots of points over here. Oases, and then all the way around Echo as well. So you'll be able to see this zoomed up on on an actual report. This is hard to look at for now. All right, so for water quality stressors by sector, we really wanted to see which sector had the most phosphorus that was being inputted into our lakes. So what we did was, we calculated those phosphorus reduction values for each project, and then we totaled them up and divided them by the amount of potential phosphorus that could be reduced in the whole watershed, and then we were able to figure out which sectors were kind of our most phosphorus heavy loading areas in the watershed. So roads, you can see, is over half. We've got for percent of contribution, we're at 53%, and that's over 102 kilograms of phosphorus a year. That could be potentially reduced if these projects were being implemented. Yes, sir?
Kelly, when you're indicating roads on this chart, are you specifically referring to dirt roads or just roads in general?
Roads in general.
Okay.
Yep. Most of the roads here are dirt, so I would say a lot of them are, especially the private roads.
Yeah, that includes the private and the town road. Okay.
It's including private, town roads, town highways, and driveways as well.
How does that compare to Willoughby? I'm just trying to remember, just to compare it to another LWAP. Do you remember what Willoughby is?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's so long ago.
I will add though to your question that it makes a difference in the P number that comes out the other end. If it's gravel versus paved, it's going to be a different benefit or uplift. So that's a good point.
And depending on the type of road, the phosphorus calculation was calculated differently using if it's a private road, we use the interim phosphorus calculator. If it was a town road, we use the MRGP phosphorus calculation that's standard for that. So it really depends on road type exactly. And then for our other top phosphorus producer, I guess, sector is our floodplains at 40 around 40 kilograms a year and 21% contribution, followed by forestry, and then agriculture, or wetlands, and then agriculture, and then river plantings, invasive species, and then lakeshore and pollution abatement.
So where are these floodplains? Are they on people's property? Like, how would you describe it? Or is that a huge?
It's kind of all over the place.
Okay.
It's like anywhere where there's there really is very few of them.
There's not enough. We do need
access to floodplains so that we can get water out of the channel, infiltrating onto the landscape, instead of rushing down the system, driving down, eroding further and further into the landscape and putting more sediment in the stream. So anywhere we can find an opportunity to improve floodplain connectivity, we really wanted to flag that. And one of the projects that floated to the top, actually our top project, is a floodplain restoration project off of Sutter Road.
Cool.
And then here's our top 30 projects. Again, you can't see this, but we're going to go through the ones that really floated to the top and that really have the most bang for your buck and potential, or profit for potential. Yeah, project potential.
Yep.
And I'm going to hand it off to Patrick, and he can get really into the nitty-gritty of these projects that we identified.
Thank you. Oh, there goes.
Slam!
So that was a lot of information, just to prime you as to how we came up with these next recommendations, okay? And a lot of this is driven by feasibility and landowner enthusiasm. enthusiasm, support, buy-in, whatever, because there's no use really pursuing this big effort if you can't get the person who owns the property to be on your team with it. So you will recognize or notice that a lot of these projects are either in municipal right-of-ways or on existing public land properties in our lands, but there are a fair amount of private properties that we've been able to work with people already to get them geared up and on board to support, design work or project development work on their property, with or without this, the continuation of LWAP or grants. So this is really, we haven't just been doing a lot of, prioritization and assessment. We've really been doing a lot of connecting with people to maybe we don't have our hand in every implementation effort, but we at least can help direct people to do their work on the ground that might need it. You got a question?
Yeah, if I'm reading correctly from the distance, you got sort of look up there as number 1?
Yeah.
Okay,
But-
but
sorry.
that's state-owned land, correct?
Very shortly, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
so if that's the case, wouldn't your suggestion go to the state, and wouldn't the state pick up the tab for that?
We're not really worried about people picking up tabs yet,
Okay.
but this is all publicly available money that we're talking about, so the state is certainly an eligible entity to utilize that money.
Does your plan have to go to the legislation?
Our plan would have to go to the manager of the property, which would, and we'll just get right into it. This is.
Yeah, it'll make more sense.
So, what was your name?
Chris,
Chris? Okay. So, prior to all this LWAP stuff, I've been working with Pete Emerson from Fish and Wildlife to subdivide and acquire 8 acres of a confluence of 2 streams at Sucker Brook where it goes under 111. We're about to close on that property like in the next 10 days. And so we have had our eyes on this property for a while because it's an important fish spawning tributary. They're the 2 biggest tributaries to either of these lakes, so they're big streams comparatively. And it has a lot of opportunity for water to spread out and slow down. And I know there's been a lot of sediment flowing through that reach for a long time, and there's dredging happening this summer at the boat ramp. You should just dredge it back up, put it on Toad Pond Road. That's where a lot of it comes from, but it's all silt, so it's not good stuff. But so like this happened last week. We've been having our eyes on this property for a while. We knew it was a good spot for doing floodplain restoration work, and now it's queued up. It has a huge amount of potential phosphorus reduction compared to a lot of projects for a relatively small footprint, because what we've found is that there's like a little bit of an artificial berm at the top. We think way back in the day someone bermed it up so that it doesn't jump and flood as much, because it used to be under hay and pasture, and now it's kind of growing back. It's a little bit of a willow bottom. We'd like to make it a thick willow bottom. We'd like to make it a very wet place where it can store and absorb and soak in water and slow down and sediment. This has not happened in like very long time, but this happened on the 11th, or the second one.
Oh, yeah.
No, the second one, the most recent. So this happened on the most recent flood. That's wrong.
Okay.
But you can see Sucker Brook's still plumb full at that point. And so if we can encourage that floodplain connection more frequently instead of these freak events, but more regularly, we can get continual sediment deposition, flood storage in this area more regularly, right? So this project flew to the top because we already have Fish and Wildlife on board with pretty much any floodplain or habitat restoration work that would be proposed on this site. This is also connected to the damages that was incurred on Water Street. If anybody's seen Water Street, very dramatic, going up to Diane's house. And there's a flood chute jumping out of Sucker Brook right at the falls, which go down Water Street, blew it apart. So we'd like to maybe pair some mitigation with restoration work to try to keep things flowing in the directions that we can handle them, right? It's got a lot of cool benefits. There's fish, there's flood resilient infrastructures, there's already existing BMPs in terms of, we're already implementing work on Valley Brook, on Upper Sucker Brook, we're trying to do on Toad Pond Road, so it would kind of, be cumulative benefits. And so this project, we want to move forward with this. This is one of our recommended projects because we can get this moving quickly. And I don't think anybody's going to have objections because this is public land. We're doing good things on public land for flood security, for habitat, for fish. So Yeah.
So you've already identified your 90 projects, and the people who are the 90 would have been informed?
No, not necessarily. If we didn't encounter you, like we weren't walking up posted lands, but if we encountered you and spoke to you, or we came to do a site visit because you requested it, then it would be reflected in those priorities of the 90 potential projects. If we didn't actually contact you, or we didn't run across you when we were out there, a lot of times we see you out on the lawnmower or something, we'll just flag you down. But sometimes we don't see you, we can't make that connection, we don't know who the landowner is.
So if we're not one of the 90 at this point, we're out of luck.
You're not what?
If we're not on your list of 90, then that's not, then we could not be one of the projects.
No, that's not. That just means that you're just a few steps behind.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
you have to request a visit, get an evaluation, and then we can help you figure out what direction to go.
Thank you.
Another project that flowed to the top, this is kind of a lake, this is a combination project. You'll see sometimes, we got our total score out of 36 up there. You'll see sometimes it's one number versus two numbers. There's a lot of lumping and splitting of projects on a single parcel based on what box it fits into with the grant world, right? So it might be a stream project, or it might be a driveway project, or it might be a lakeshore project. Some properties have multiple if you have a lot of things going on or it's a big property. So sometimes you'll see these paired up. This is a stream, this is Cranberry Brook, it's got very little buffer down here. There's cows in it, there's a fence keeping out of the water, but we love wide buffers, we love no-mow zones. We've got a little bit of interest from the landowner to implement such practices in an existing wetland that is just a pasture. We got no buffer on the lakeshore. They're getting a lot of ice push, big rocks are being moved. They've lost like 20 feet of waterward frontage, not linear frontage, waterward frontage over the past decade or two. And their house is like right on the edge, so there's some shoreland erosion going on. There's this driveway ditch that intercepts probably perennial stream, but a very small kind of seepy stream, and you're just seeing the driveway just calve off and chunk into the lake, and this is like, it's happening right there, so it's feet from the lake. And they approached us, they wanted help. There's actually two property owners, one with a right-of-way and one with ownership. And both of them want our help. So this project is a kind of a slam dunk, three birds with one stone kind of approach. And there's not really any heavy engineering going on here. So it could be a relatively quickly moving project. Any questions about this? This is another major outlet of a tributary that drains from Mud Pond up on Mead Hill Road. And now we're down on Echo. And this is West Echo Lake Road, and it has had a rough year. And we've talked to probably a dozen landowners on this road from where it splits at East Echo and rejoins at the end. And we met with the Charleston Road Commissioner. We did a 3-hour drive around and looked at a bunch of project sites. It's been patched up well each time, but what the problem to me is there's a lot of concentrated runoff happening. So we'll get these stream crossings of the road, either the pipe's not big enough or it clogs up, something else happens, it swells up. The road is at a constant pitch, so it's not going to go over the road and back into the stream. It runs down that ditch, that cut slope ditch, and then it hijacks 2 other streams and 3 other streams, and then you got these driveway culverts that are like this big, and they don't stand a chance.
Patrick, why is it a 3 and a 9? It's 2 projects?
There's a couple projects thrown together. That's what we mentioned a minute ago.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry. I missed that.
Dexter Bennett years ago told us that road was never actually a road, that the logging road that comes over across from 105 to their farm was the original road. And that the reason that wasn't a road was because it flooded all the time. So is that linked to the fact that there are still all these problems?
Well, I mean, my opinion of a lot of roads here, they're just goat paths or skid trails that got converted to move passenger cars, and they've got poor substrate, they've got uneven subgrade that frost heaves and liquefies, and the pipes are always too small. So it's just a reality of an old pioneer state that is trying to get up to a changing and precipitation regime. So yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that. It's amazing when you see some of this road erosion, just how deep the road base is. I mean, feet above native soil. So like, there's a lot of gravel that we've placed up in these roads, and so it's not eons old gravel. So it's not like cemented together or anything. But So this whole stretch, essentially from the north split to the south reconnection, we would like to look at. And this is a relatively simple design, you know, for us. We can try to capture the drainage area, try to size culvert crossings preliminarily to be appropriate to those drainage areas, try to, you know, recommend ditch improvements and road surface improvements, getting rid of the greater berms on the side of the road so that water actually sheets off the road and doesn't just collect along the shoulder of the road. Armoring ditches. There's some wetlands down here that really need to be fixed. They've been dredged and that's not helping the problem. So we'd like to work with those landowners. And these are all, you know, within the public right of way. And I think the Charleston Select Board will discuss this request from us either tomorrow night or in 2 weeks. But we'd like to pursue this project as well because it's just a repetitive issue and it's affecting a lot of properties and moving a lot of dirt into Echo Lake. I need a sip.
Yeah. Especially before that.
So this is Tuesday morning, last week, and this is a very humbling photo and experience because you just see, you know, how much can go wrong and how quickly it will go wrong. And you know, this whole experience has been like weirdly affirming, like grossly satisfying because we like found all these spots like this looks kind of sketchy. I think this needs attention, and then you come back after flood and it is obliterated, right? So it's like, okay, we're on the right track, but we didn't really grasp the scale of the potential damage. And so, I mean, Eric Pope and the town and the Austin group have been working so hard to fix this road, and it's important because there's people that live up there. And, you know, they've given us the go-ahead to try to do some drainage analysis, up gradient from Toad Pond, and try to really pinpoint where water needs to be allowed through the road, under the road, trying to prevent water from hijacking down the road, because that is what plagues this road. It's a seriously long side hill cut, and there's no relief except for these old pipes, and they're causing, you know, the outlets of the pipes aren't pitched properly, so they're causing gullies on the downhill side, which then unzipper on their way down to Sucker Brook, and so it is the cascading effect, and so we really want to address this road. I'm not going to be able to give you all the answers. This road needs some serious engineering in the long term, but we can at least get the process started and do some preliminary analysis to show, do some hydraulics and just show like, okay, we've got so many acres up here. If we want to size this to this amount of rainfall, we're going to need a pipe this big, or we're going to need to, you know, I mean, it's hard to talk about realigning roads, but in some cases, like, are you going to do this every year if it happens? You know, so those conversations will have to be had. 6 pounds of phosphorus. This is laughable. This number, 6 pounds of phosphorus. You could hold 6 pounds of phosphorus, like, you know, in a pouch. And to think about how much sediment came down that road and how much phosphorus in that sediment, like that number doesn't catch that. So it's just, you know, we're targeting these areas, and this is a good. So there's not a lot of agriculture in the watershed. We looked at a couple farms. And for the most part, they're actually in pretty good shape. They do have, you know, relatively stable ditching, and you know, there's not a lot of corn, so there's not a lot of bare soil agriculture. It's mostly hay or pasture. You know, we see areas like this. This is pretty well vegetated, but we see areas like this where we could see more of an alder buffer to make sure that if that field gets hit with 10 inches of rain, you know, there's some woody roots holding everything together and not just pasture grass and some thatch, right? So we've gotten preliminary, you know, interest from, you know, a farmer to potentially vegetate, you know, woody vegetation along these major drainage. They're like not really streams, they're kind of seedy wetlands that have just become streams. So this project ranks high, and you know, this isn't probably fish-bearing stream habitat, but you know, this could have good effects for Echo Lake, and it might, you know, help to slow down water as it's coming off the mountainsides before it hits the roads that we're also trying to address. Oases and Sugarbush Road, there's a lot of drainage issues over there, and we're really excited to have worked with you know, the timber tract landowners and all the lakeshore landowners. We were just at the Lakeshore Association or the Road Association annual meeting on Saturday, and that went really well. And we've already connected them with an engineer who specializes in hydrology and hydraulics to kind of scour this hill slope and look at potential mitigation issues or efforts, preventative efforts, you know. So again, ditches, culverts, gullies, cross draining, you know, just pretty not so sexy road improvements, but might have real benefits to properties downstream, you know, the forest itself, the road itself, access. You know, these are steep hillsides, and they carry a lot of energy when they come down. And then when you always see the road right at the bottom of the hill, right? Just above the water, but just not on the steep. And that's where everything wants to land, and that's where we put our camps. And so it's like, how can we get water sneaking between these camps that are 12 feet apart? So it's not easy. We found a dam that nobody knew about. It wasn't on any map, but spoke to this landowner. This is a fascinating story. Apparently it got started built in the 40s or something, and maybe the war happened and their priorities shifted, or they couldn't get a turbine, but apparently it never did anything. And now it's just plumb full of sediment. There's Gabby right there.
Oh, wow, she's camo.
And that's a breach. And that's the abutment. And there's a spillway right there. This is not a great phosphorus project. There's not a lot of acreage of restored floodplain. In fact, this thing is a major sediment trap.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you.
But it's a hazard. You know, it could give out, it could fail, and all of a sudden you got metric tons of material come down river. There's not a very big pipe below this to, you know, pass all that material. So this is a major priority for us. It's not really, it's also a major fish benefit. Fish are not getting up that right now. And so I'd like to keep working with this. It's got a lot of, you know, it's got a lot of opportunities for improvement, but it's also a relatively complex project that we, as a nonprofit conservation group, are not going to pretend to design. So we're not going to do that. Is there a question? Yeah,
So
Chris.
is that running parallel to Morgan Charleston Road at the base where it hits?
Is this another dam? Morgan Charleston Road? No, this is Cranberry Brook. So like
The Cranberry.
500 yards that way, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Running towards the lake, that's the,
Yeah.
Oh, sure. It's pointing towards the lake. Yeah. For the most part, it held up all month. It took those storms and it held up. I mean, there's like a little side gully right here. So it's not like an imminent risk, I don't think. Been there a long time, but it's definitely not something we should ignore. So there's some small stretch of kind of wetlandy shoreland, the southeast end of Echo on a agricultural parcel. It could be fenced out to keep the cattle out. It could be passively restored, or it could be actively planted with woody, you know, woody shrubs. Just help to filter some of the barnyard and hayfield and pasture runoff. Not a big drainage area. You know, East Echo Lake Road, all the water from on the other side goes the other way. This is really like the end of the watershed boundary. So there's not a major agricultural drainage into the southeast end of Echo. And, but I do know the Conservation District and Agency of Ag have been talking with these farmers for a little while about enrolling in a program that incentivizes buffer plantings and fencing out cows. And so we're going to leave that in their hands. They're more suited to deal with agricultural projects. We deal more with kind of non-regulatory and voluntary projects. So Conservation District and there's also conservation easement on the farm. So there's a couple parties involved working on addressing opportunities on this parcel. There's another project on drain to Seymour that is kind of like a ditched stream running through some fields, and then it hits Morgan Charleston Road and it's gullying. It's starting to make like a little waterfall, and it scours 2 feet, and then that scour just kind of chases uphill, right? So That's that 2-foot drop, and this is a big scour hole, and there's not much woody vegetation holding that. These are really heavy soils. There's a lot of phosphorus bound up in this, not only because it's just heavy soils, but it's also because it probably has a lot of history as agricultural. It's probably been manured a lot. So it's probably laden with phosphorus. This doesn't suggest a whole lot of benefit, but we feel as though this is a relatively large drainage, and it has progressively become more unstable in the last year. And it's a relatively simple fix. Like, it's not that a super expensive fix. So that's how these things float to the top. And because it's in the municipal right of way, partially, it's probably relatively simple to get landowner buy-in. So this is another project that we'd like to see implemented or addressed. Williams Road, another example. Again, like, these numbers don't reflect the flood damage. These numbers reflect what improvements could we see if we took the road prism on July 10th, or the road segment on July 10th, and upgraded it so that it was compliant with state road BMP requirements. So that's a measly little number, but you can see the risk level of not doing the improvements far outweighs the cost of doing them. If we were able to do this preventively and not subject it to 8 inches of rain. So I don't actually know the state of Williams. I haven't been able to get back to Williams Road in a few days.
How much restoration is going to happen there before you're able to do anything that's going to prevent it the next time? Are you going to spend money and then have to spend it again?
It's the unfortunate reality is the emergency repairs. They are just that. They're emergency repairs. They're not thoroughly engineered. The material is probably subpar. If the compaction rate isn't ideal. If it's been raining all week, everything's wet. You're just compacting Jello. So it's not something that we can really, address properly given the short time period that you have to get access back to these residents. You got to do something, and the stopgap measure is just like, let's get the road passable, and you can't blame them, but it takes time to figure out what the problem is and sort out a remedy and line up the money to get it to be paid for. So it sucks. It's not perfect.
Did you say that you had a remedy and that it just hadn't been implemented before this?
No, we had been spitballing what you could do to provide improvements, upgrades, simple things like armoring ditches. They're simple, but they are expensive. They come out of the tax base. This is town budget. So like armoring ditches, the town has a priority list of which roads need it the most, and we see things from a different perspective. We're looking at they're looking at travel lanes, passage, plowing. We're looking at how's water flowing specifically. And so when we see a small pipe in a relatively big stream, we're like, this is a risk. We should work to upgrade this pipe, this culvert. And there's, some of these projects, like I mentioned earlier, they're really lumped or split. We're talking about a road that's like 2 miles long and you got like 30, 40 dots around it. It's not a perfectly succinct way to package that. So, there's multiple things that could be improved. So we have a contract with DEC and the Conservation District to do preliminary designs, and what we think has the most benefit and what we could provide based on our skill set and our resources to move things along in the interim are these 5 projects. We got the Sucker Brook confluence, we've got West Echo Lake Road, we got Toad Pond Road. We could potentially squeeze in 1 or 2 more after that based on our budget. We just have a limited budget, right? And Gabby and I getting back out there 3 times to look at things that we've already seen twice before, it's hard to do that every time it rains. I'm like really worried about this weekend, but we'd like to do these 3 first and foremost because we have almost guaranteed landowner support. We know how to work in these settings. We know how to play by the rules for the most part to make sure that they're eligible projects. The towns, at least one of them, have already committed to being like, yes, please, the more information and the more perspectives we can get on this issue, the better, because they know that it's a patch job right now, right? But we're going to keep having people live up there. We're going to have to do something long term. So I don't know if there's any sentiments about this, if people are disappointed. You know, we try to do some lakeshore projects. This one down here is kind of that, you know, cobbled together multi-project type, which I would prefer to focus on that one if we're able to do a fourth. I would prefer to do that because there's a driveway, there's a stream, there's a wetland, there's lakeshore land. It's a really visible project. The landowners have expressed support. You know, one of them's already gotten a Lakewise certificate. They'd like to get a Lakewise award, so they're incentivized. That's a cost-effective project. Same with Sucker and Valley Brook. These two, no, there's no kidding about how expensive those are going to be.
So Patrick, speaking of expensive,
Mhm.
is there a limit on the funding after the design?
Yeah.
is done?
Yeah, so these two roads are not eligible for, at least our like non-voluntary, non-regulatory funding programs. So they are municipal roads, they're subject to the municipal road general permit. The towns are responsible for upgrading their roads to meet these permit rules and regulations, and they have been doing so for a long time, and every year they chip away at segments of road that have been listed as priority. Like for instance in Seymour and on East Echo Lake Road. So we worked with, what was the former foreman in Charleston? Bernie. We worked with Bernie on East Echo Lake Road. We got those improvements put in on the kind of northern section. Those held up really well. I know there's one landowner who received a lot of water, and we saw that coming, unfortunately. You know, that road held up really well for the most part. But, you know, what we can do is we can provide a plan, and then people like the roads crew can implement that work depending on the level of technical work that needs to be done, right? If it's not pouring concrete and setting a bridge, then a lot of times the road crews can do this, and they see it on a plan, and they know what they're looking at, like, yeah, okay, I know how to do that, we can do that right here. So we can help with those sorts of things.
I'm just trying to understand here.
Yeah.
So, these are like the top 5 to 7 projects. The rest of the 90,
So the rest of the 90 will be, hopefully, we have to review a DEC first, but the rest of the 90 will hopefully be eligible projects that could be explored by somebody like the Conservation District or a lake association or ourselves or Northwoods could be explored to get, you know, support designing or implementing work to improve, you know, their property, for instance. But you know, there are a lot of rules to these grants, right? And most of those 94 are like stop mowing grass right here, plant some trees.
Yeah.
That is not worth getting a grant. It's way too much burden on us. It's not cost effective. It's not time efficient. You know, there are a lot of behavioral and management changes that can be made by individual landowners to just add resiliency to their own property when it comes to stormwater and runoff and erosion. And that's a lot of the 94.
And we can.
But we wanted to get that out there, so we put them all. We were only supposed to do 30, and we did 94.
Right, and that's
And
sort
that's Gabby. Where is she? I don't know where she's at.
Do we
Yeah, Gabby's
summarize?
the champion.
We summarize that in the final plan, the 90 sort of.
Those ones will be like available, and you can look at that. And if you're in a 94, you know that means like you are probably eligible for some grant assistance if you really think it's worthwhile. A lot of times, it's a lot easier for us to just come out for an hour visit, and then maybe email you back a plan or a species list or a little detailed drawing or a recommendation to a contractor, and then you guys can have that work implemented on your property. It's going to happen 5 to 10 times faster. So that's what I'm really trying to stress. Is these ones, you know, unless we do it, Fish and Wildlife got enough going on. They're probably not going to get to this very quickly. You know, the towns are slammed trying to fix roads, so they don't have the capacity to think about the long game at the moment, right? They're trying to get reimbursed. And then, you know, something like this is a private landowner. We try to have an even mix of projects, municipal and private, Echo and Seymour.
Yeah.
What else?
I just want to make sure that you're clarifying that. So roads don't qualify for clean water money? Well, certain
they
things,
qualify
depends
for
on what
different
you're
money.
doing.
Not like when, you know, Beth Torpy sits on the Basin Water Quality Council with myself and some other people, and Meg, and probably some other people in here. And those are grants that are non-voluntary, non-regulatory, and voluntary. So those are like, we don't necessarily need you to pitch in, although it really strengthens an application. But it's also like, there's no rule in the books that says you have to do this. You're doing this out of the goodness of your heart, right? Whereas if it's a Vermont Route 111 stormwater management issue, we can't touch that. That's a regulatory project. If it's a dam, water level management from the dams on these 2 lakes, we can't touch that. That's the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. If it's a 5-acre subdivision and development project going up on one of these hills, that's subject to the stormwater rules. So we can't really bring a grant to help out private endeavor, right? So there are these rules, and the state's responsible for their highway, and the town's responsible for their roads. But what we can do for the towns at least is get you a leg up to figuring out where exactly practices should be implemented, not only so that it prevents further disaster, but also so that they are working towards compliance with their permit. Right? You guys, the towns have to do this, so we're trying to give you a little bit of a get ahead. And they also just have the greatest kind of common good benefit. So that's why we'd like to work on these ones, and we feel like our skill set is well suited to helping with that effort. All these 30% are going to need additional effort to get full designs and permits in place if need be. So, Rhonda?
Yeah, so the East Echo Lake Road that was done not that long ago that held up really well, that was all just town money that funded that?
I walked out there with Bernie and Jim Ryan, and we were out there with Colleen, and we spent probably 2 hours walking and talking, and made a map, or made a sketch. I put the map together, I got it to Bernie, and I didn't even know he did it, but he did it, and I drove by, and it just looks incredible. And this is what, last August? So, and it's held up really well. I know there's hot spots.
Our road got totally washed out as a result of the culverts. We put in new culverts on a road that we had for 95 years with no problems, including last July, is now gone. Down the
Sorry.
driveway.
Yeah, oh yeah.
No problem, right?
Well, I don't know if the energy is directed at me or the frustration is directed at me, but there are, like I'm saying, there are things that we can do to help you. So
Well,
if
no,
you,
I thought that you had just said that the road was doing great thanks to the work that got done, and I'm just saying, at our expense.
that's an unfortunate situation, yeah.
Yeah.
But the road itself proper is doing a lot better than it was.
Oh, good.
But Patrick, I follow up on Rhonda's question. I believe that was a grant through Backroads Vermont.
Was it?
With Alan.
Ben shaking his
Because
head.
I know Alan.
I don't
came-
know, but yeah, I think there are state grants that can support towns, but I think Toad Pond is probably not something that is gonna put much of a dent in for the level of work, so it certainly can help with some of the state funding for some of those things, you can chip away at them, but I don't wanna suggest that the state funding could cover all of that without a significant chunk of town funding. So there are other different funding sources that we can try to cobble together, but I think the point is that that's kind of on the town in terms of the driver. It doesn't make sense for Patrick to be looking at those grants because it's more the town's responsibility to look for those grants, and they have the expertise and ability to do that. But I do feel like providing the town with these designs is really helpful in terms of providing that support, and there's not a lot of funding for doing design work for these types of things, so it is kind of a unique opportunity to have someone with this watershed focus supporting the town in these types of projects.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah.
With all the restoration work that's been done on 111 and other roads as well, is that gonna inspire you to come back and take another look at what the implications of that work is?
So the repairs that have been made.
Yeah.
Well, I just drove 111 down to Big Rock, and that shoulder looks a lot more robust than it did. They've got that's big crushed stone that they've put in there. So I think.
But they replaced some culverts too.
I bet I saw that, and I can only hope that they got majorly upsized. But they definitely put some more insurance policy into the shoulder of the road, the ditch, because it is definitely one of those ditches that hijack streams when the water's super high. That's another road that's right at the toe of the slope, right at that breaking slope. So it's just kind of a natural place for that stuff to happen. So I don't know if we want to start talking about flood stuff, but I've got at least the chair of Morgan Select Board who has supported the Toad Pond effort. We've got Fish and Wildlife who's supportive of Sucker and Valley Brook. We've got hopefully an item on the agenda for Charleston to discuss West Echo Lake Road. But I know these aren't private property projects, and that probably stings for some folks. The challenge with private property projects is that they can be very complex with multiple land ownerships, something that makes it very hard to navigate. They can be smaller in scale, and so not as dramatic benefits to be realized. And there's also a lot of opportunity for those projects to be done potentially more cost effectively as a landowner with some technical support or assistance from a local organization like Northwoods or the Conservation District or MWA. We are still here to provide like consultations and referrals and recommendations and all that stuff. But in terms of like putting money to work, these are the most effective ways to spend what we have left to do design work. So we're looking for blessings or at least support to do that. And if there's any other major areas that need to be looked at, we're still doing site visits for folks. And a lot of places is really hard. Like if it's damaged your home, unfortunately there's not much I or MWA or the Conservation District can do, but we can at least help to connect you with contractors that we trust, or explain a little bit of what permitting might need to be addressed, or just provide general recommendations on drainage improvement. So it's something that we're here for.
So do those services continue after this LWAP is closed out?
Yeah, so we have until like October 31st or something to put these designs together, and then we have this final kind of packaged report that we will have to submit, I think, by December. And then that's the end of our contract to do this work, right? And if we were a consulting group from Burlington or Waterbury, you would probably never see us again, unless you called us up and had us out for a visit. But we are in Newport, and they are in Newport, and associations are here, and towns aren't going away. So if we can stay involved, this is our home turf. This is where we want to work, So it's for job security. I mean, flooding is great job security for me. But like we're really busy right now, and so like I'm hoping it doesn't rain because if we're responding to all these calls, we can't get to doing what we're supposed to be doing. So there's a little bit of a stress with that.
Just to make another point is that by listing these items as priorities in the Lake Watershed Action Plan, it does make it a priority for subsequent funding. So those top 3 are important because they're going to move forward with the 30% design. But number 3 and 4 are a high priority for follow-up funding. Yeah. And there is some possibilities to get some funding to continue MWA or the Conservation District's continuing engagement in what we call project development. So, I really don't think anyone's looking to leave some of those things further down the list that are smaller. Probably are not the priorities, but I think some of those other ones that are 3 or 4 or maybe 8, you don't really know which ones are going to gain legs or be the highest priority to move forward. Yeah. But I do suspect a lot of those other projects are going to have some potential, because I do see, a lot of ones that do seem pretty cost efficient and
Thanks, Don.
I just had a question about seeing the lakes. The watershed is a large thing which not all of us are even able to place everything in. And then you've got individual properties which are very small. There are road associations. Just roughly, do you have a sense of how many road associations there are in the watershed and how many you've spoken to directly? You talked about the ones at Waise's and the Sugar Bush Road.
We talked to probably 3 or 4. I don't know how many there are. Meg would probably have a better
Some of
idea.
the lake associations might know.
It's a big
Tom?
Yeah. And a lot I learned this weekend, some of them aren't even real associations. They it's impressive because they've got like officers and they make motions and they approve minutes and they keep minutes, which keeping minutes is hard. And then I to find out that they don't actually have bylaws and they're doing this just like out of practice from other organizations, and they're like, how do we do this? And I'm like, oh, I don't know. There's 36 people involved, and this gets really complicated. So the road associations, good news is like if you are a road association, formal or informal, and you've got consensus, there are eligible grants to do private road work depending on the circumstances, right? We're not going to be putting in giant storm drain systems on a road that services 4 camps, but if there's BMPs, did I do all this?
Yeah, I wanna
If
see
there's
the logo.
BMPs, jeez. If there's BMPs that we can do that are cost effective and that have clear, meaningful benefits to the lake, like those are all eligible. And it would be very helpful for us to have a group of people who are concerted in their effort to, you know, and unidirectional, you know, like, so when people come to us and like, we want to do this, like, okay, I can help you with this step, you guys are going to have to do that step, come back to me and we can seek implementation funding. You might not get all of it, but you might get a good chunk of it, so.
Patrick,
Yeah.
so can you go back a second? Are you, of those 5 projects?
Oh,
At one
this,
point you said, you know, you're supposed to do 3, but you thought maybe 4 and 5 could.
yeah, so with Willoughby, I think we were supposed to do 3 and then we had a little cash left over, and so we did 2 more.
So you
Because they were really simple.
You may be able to do designs for all 5 of those.
I would say we may be able to do designs for 4. Because we spent a lot of time getting back out here and inventorying.
And you're
After
looking
we
for
start.
us to pick the 4.
I'm looking for
Yeah.
consensus that these are smart ideas and that people can jive with this being, you know, what we pursue, what we progress with in the interim. And that if people want to, you know, talk about observations that they've had in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we can talk about that. We can make a note to try to get things plugged in. I don't know where the East Echo Lake Road landowner went, but like, that's a perfect candidate for, like, I wish I get information from them. So like, give me your information, so that we can reach out, get you on the list of potentially eligible projects. So that's kind of why it's good that so many people are here, because, you know, not that we're just like, come bombard us with projects, but like, you know, to get into the system, to play the system, to play the game, you got to be in the system. And getting recognized as projects is the first way to get in the system.
Well, personally, I feel like, I mean, you're the expert. If these are the most important things that you've just decided on, we should follow your lead. I will tell you that the West Echo Lake, the number 2, the town did put in some larger culverts across the road.
Yep.
You noticed that?
Yep. I did see a couple of those.
Nothing on the side.
Yes.
I have a question around responsibility.
Sure.
Obviously, a culvert going under the road is a town responsibility. Culverts go under driveway, my understanding is that's the landowner's responsibility. So on West Echo Lake Road, as that water ran down, those culverts under the driveways weren't large enough to handle that runoff. So, is there a responsibility? The landowner needs to put in larger culverts? And how do they, pay for that?
Yeah, so that's a good point. So that's a really complicated situation. And I think a lot of the prescription would be to increase the size of some of these driveway culverts, right? What people don't know just looking at a driveway is like, what size culvert should we put in so that we know that it'll be robust, right? And not wash out again. We can help figure that out, right? Culvert pipe for a driveway, you might spend $2,000 to buy the pipe if it's a really big pipe. You know, if it's like a 4-foot, 5-foot pipe. If you're getting a 2-foot, 3-foot pipe, you're talking $700 to $1,500 bucks. You know, what we might be able to do is not only help you identify what size pipe you need, but perhaps if you were to be able to pitch in to buy the pipe, we might be able to convince some grant to cost share the implementation work or something like that. Now, when you have a lot of landowners like that, we can't say for certain. It all depends. It depends on a lot of factors. So, but that's what we could help with, and we could provide the town with recommendations to what size pipes should really be in those stream crossings. Because I saw a lot of 3-foot pipes going, and not all those streams are the same size.
So Patrick, a follow-up to your question. So currently, the town of Charleston will install it if you buy it.
Okay.
I don't know after this crazy amount of work they've had to do if they're still gonna hold that up, but that has always been their policy. Because they want the right size in there, but it's your pipe, so if you get it, if Patrick tells you what size you need, up until today, they were installing them for you.
But doesn't that make sense? Because if you don't put the right size culvert in, then the town taxpayers have to pay the expense of having the road crew come out and rebuild the road again and again and again.
And we're also exploring other things besides culverts. Like depending on the road surface or use, there are other things like an armored crossing that's 99% dry, or dry 99% of the time, but can receive runoff in a rainstorm. You just gotta build out a proper material, so it's not just like fine road base. It might be crushed stone that's compacted and aggregated. It might be a broad-based dip instead of a tiny little culvert. You know, it depends on the use. You gotta get a fuel truck or a little lowboy in there. You know, you're gonna need a certain practice. So like, we're not just committed to throwing big pipes everywhere.
So as a town, being a West Echo Lake resident and having my driveway out two years in a row, you know, I understand the problems with nature, and I'm not gonna point blame at anyone, you know, because this is no one's fault. But I'm also, I'll write a check now for a culvert. So I mean, you know, from that point of view, who's telling me that I have to do that, or I can do that?
Telling you that you can't do what?
That I can buy a culvert.
Nobody.
Nobody's stopping you.
But who's informing me that I have that right?
Well, I mean, it's in the information, the town puts that out every year, by the way. They actually send that out with like, the annual report and tax bills. So, they.
I didn't know this. This is
Yes.
great. Yes.
Hell, I didn't either.
Yeah. I don't have a driveway culvert, so.
Right.
They're not.
If the driveway's uphill from you, don't have culverts or have smaller culverts? I don't know how much help it's gonna be.
Well, we're working on it. There's a lot of good intention on West Echo Lake Road.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good people who are more than willing to cooperate.
Yeah.
We're more than willing to put out some funds if we need to do that. I can't speak for other people, but I'm just saying that, you know, I think the key is we want to all work together on these things, and it always bottoms out who's paying for it.
Yeah.
And because that's the stall. You know, well, I'm not going to pay for it. You're not going to pay. So it comes down to a simple thing of saying, who's responsible to improve our land? We've all invested in a community that we thoroughly love, and we want to continue to improve it and not jeopardize it. And it seems like we had the same culvert from last July for this July.
Part of that, like, is systemic. Like you can't go to FEMA and say, hey, I'd like to be reimbursed. Well, they're gonna say, well, you put a bigger pipe in. And I'm like, well, yeah, it needs it. I'm like, well, this is a repair reimbursement. This is not an upgrade. So there's like a lot of things like that just get in the way. And the reason why these non-regulatory voluntary grants are so great is because like they didn't exist previously. You know, like there were very few ways to incentivize landowners without requiring some sort of match or without giving something up. You know, so there are you know, trade-offs to working with these grants. Like you're gonna have to say, sure, come on by once a year and take a look and make sure it's performing, right?
Well, I think I can speak on behalf of our association. We certainly appreciate your efforts and the time that you're giving to this so we become a better and safer community. So again, hats off to you and your team.
Thank you.
And again, if we were number one, I'd even compliment you more, but you know.
So Patrick, again, I'm fine with this list because I think you guys did a great job. I mean, I think I personally have seen you floating down streams, but when you go to move forward with these, are you guys gonna stay in touch with the landowners that are impacted by this?
Yeah, so like, you know, with Sucker Brook, I work with Fish and Wildlife almost every day, right? So they're gonna know what we're up to down here. We gotta get their sign off thing. For West Echo Lake Road, like Colleen's been in touch with us 3 times this week. So we are in touch, and like, she comes to us on with unrelated questions about other things going on in town. So
I was thinking another level down. I mean, I understand with Sucker Brook that you've got to work with the state.
yeah.
But when you're working on West Echo, or any of the other.
Oh, you mean the
If you're just
butters?
gonna go to Colleen.
Yeah.
That's not gonna.
Sure. So you mean like with the residents?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like the people who are, like Carl, who are gonna be impacted by whether or not we have a larger culvert in their driveway or not.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of conversation or input or whatever it is, even an email saying, here's where we are with the project, here's the next step, would kind of help, I think, everybody understand and buy in as we go forward.
So I think it's a good thing to do that. It's a good thing to keep people apprised, right? But it's something where we have to rely on the landowners to work with their neighbors to keep people informed, because we can't possibly talk to everybody all the time, right? So like that's what we expect from you. If we're doing work for you, you need to do some work to help us make this go smoothly. And we can't mend relationships that have been broken So like that's what the human dynamic of these projects. So like that's what really interplays and can sabotage or make a successful project, right? So like we are an open book, right? You can approach us with questions, but to a certain degree we got to respect private landowners, you know, privacy. And at the same time, we are trying to be cognizant of down gradient neighbors, downslope neighbors, abutters, and the impacts that any work we do has on that. Like there's a couple projects that we just said we weren't going to touch because we're nervous about the implications off property, for instance, right? So that's something that we take, you know, consideration of. And
Yeah, Tom, do you want to chime in?
So Carl, I don't want to speak for you, but correct me if I happen to be totally off base here, but if the town has reached out to me and Patrick, and I think Carl's involved, they want to do something to really help West Echo Lake Road. That's why they're on this list. So we haven't had that discussion yet, but we plan to. And so hopefully there will be that, as you said, that cooperation with the town. I think now they want that. I really do think they, you know,
And by
they know that they need that help. So I think we'll
Or
get
they
it.
can just keep rebuilding the road.
Well, no, but I think they now realize how serious this is, and so I think, so we haven't had a meeting yet, but that's in the plans.
And by we, you mean the Lake Association?
Yes. Yes.
So if you're in the communication channels of the Lake Association, that's a good way to stay informed. Right? Yeah.
I'm curious about, all of these are things to be preventative and hopefully to cause it, but what happens about all that stuff that's in the lake now? You know, like, I've been watching just over the past 2 weeks, you know, the crayfish are dead, the clams are all gone, or
buried.
I don't exactly know what happens to them, and, you know, the fish the little minnows that just keep washing up that are dead, and now literally sinking in at least 6 inches of silt that didn't exist there in June. You know, and I think that, is there something that you can do?
Us? No, we can't do anything. I mean,
But I mean, I'm
you
asking.
all, I mean, if you wanted to
For the
dive
lake?
into the world of
Was it
Army
the
Corps
next level?
dredging permits and just like
God.
fork up money, yeah, you can do something about it. The one thing I would say is be on those bars that just showed up, because that is where the knotweed is going to start. That's where the phragmites are going to start. As soon as that water level drops, that is germination substrate, and all that crap that came down is probably loaded with invasives or just stuff. And so, like, be on the lookout for that. And that's what I will be worried about. You know, because like a lot of those road shoulders that just disappeared, they landed somewhere and they carried all that root mass with them, and that's what makes me nervous. So, and there's rules about invasive, you know, like herbicidal application in the water. There are certain products that you can or can't use. There's a permit you'll need. Terrestrial stuff is different. Either way, you're going to need a licensed applicator. If you want to pull it out by hand, more power to you. But don't put it in your compost heap. You know, bag it and chuck it out, because you just throw the roots out the back door and they're just going to sprout. And there are grants out there right now from the Conservation District for invasive species. It's terrestrial though.
Well, yeah, I think Phragmites falls under that if it's on the edge. Wetlands, I guess it'd be in wetland, but yeah.
So that's
I
what
have a handout for that.
Okay. That's what I'll be worried about. I don't have a time check.
Yeah, so it is 7. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. I do have 2 large maps on this table, but if there's any particular flooding information that you'd like to share with us that maybe you haven't already heard, you could mark up these maps with a red pen. I do have a summary sheet about the Lake Watershed Action Plan and lots of information about the Lake Wise program and the best management practices for your own. Again, those are those small acts that everyone can do. That was my one question for Patrick, is in the bigger list of the 30, is there like any low-hanging fruit?
Yeah.
Like those are the cheap, you know.
That's a good point. I didn't think.
The cheap projects that you can do with a volunteer group, or that aren't these bigger prime.
So, Gabby, you're gonna have to help me on this one.
And please enjoy some of the
This one,
refreshments before you go.
This is a farm up at the top of Mead Hill where that triple intersection is by the cemetery. You know, there's something like a tractor ford going across an old wetland, and it looks like hell, and it's just mucking up and flushing out, and there's cornfields on both sides. We'd love to just take that crossing out. You know, they can go around. There's a driveway. Maybe we can get permission from the landowner so the tractors can come in. But that wouldn't really cost anything, and that's just stopping a behavior or management activity. So like that's, you know, that's a really easy one. But that means that someone's got to know that producer, have a good relationship with them, not whack their finger of shame at them, and just say like, hey, we'd like to do this, and would you work with them on that? Yeah.
Are you working with the select board in the town of Holland in any of this? You got more?
What? Well, yeah. So we're working a lot with them on Hunting Camp Road and their section of Valley Road near the dairy farm that we retired.
What about this property you're talking about here? I think that's probably, no, I guess that's in Morgan.
I think it's Holland. I think it's Holland.
Off the hill by the cemetery.
Yeah,
that's in Holland.
yeah. So we haven't brought. That's not really a town problem, but I know what you're getting at, and I don't know if we could double check the landowner and see if there's some sort of, you know, nudge that could be made. Like, hey, we saw this.
Maybe they don't even know what you got here.
A lot of people don't see what we see, and so like you just got to point it out and explain it. Like, oh yeah, okay, I can see why that's probably not great for fish or something. So that's what we're willing to do. That's what I mean. Like, we'll come down for an hour and take a walk if you'll have us.
There's another one here, gully stabilization at Hayfields, off
Yeah.
of Williams Road. It's
Yeah.
just, you know, gully, you know, it's easy, you can stabilize it, redirect water to flow, not in that concentrated path. You can regrade that slope, erase it completely if they had that opportunity. You know, that's just quick, easy money, or easy project to complete.
This one.
Lake access BMPs.
Oh yeah.
That one, you know, it's a lot of management, or like upgrades in management, improving the check dam ditch that's running down the side. Maybe over time, thinking about regrading the road so it flows into the ditch a little bit better instead of flowing down towards the lake. You know, those are easy management upgrades.
And Allison's already helped. I'm just pointing at Allison with the laser. Allison's already helped us like connect with Fish and Wildlife's access manager. You know, to be like, hey, these are some things that we've noticed. Things need a little bit of maintenance, and we might have some room to do a little additional, you know, actions.
Which access was that, Seymour or?
Echo. You know, we got another farm one down here. There's just like, it's just a barnyard, and when it rains, it slopes towards the brook, and we'd like to be able to intercept that. Barnyard stuff is really not our bag of tricks, so that's where we'd look at Bevan and her colleagues to do that.
A few small buffer plantings off of West Echo Road in Charleston with head cut stabilization as well, you know, just putting a buffer on those ditch channels and stabilizing the banks and erasing those head cuts as well, so it's not inputting all that sediment constantly into the lake.
This 30 are going to artificially exclude, you know, like do-it-yourselfer projects because one, there's so many of them, we probably don't have much landowner buy-in information, so there's a knock on the point. It's not a big project area because it's a camp property, it's like 0.6 of an acre or less. Not going to score very high. It's got
Not lucrative in phosphorus.
there's not a lot of phosphorus. It doesn't have as many co-benefits because there's no public access or not highly visible and educational or something like that. So
all those projects naturally scored lower
Yeah.
and were voted up to the top here.
So you're talking about 3 towns really, Morgan, Charleston, and Holland.
yeah.
So what if a report was sent to the Board of Selectmen of those 3 towns that saying, we've identified these situations that can be rectified by doing this. So you're identifying it, you're giving them a solution, you've dropped it in their box. Has that been thought about?
It's been done elsewhere for other
We
LWAPs.
invite them to all of these meetings.
Yeah, we're not done yet, but they're gonna get.
Don't get
Here,
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
in Morgan, we talked about it all the time.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, Bruce invites.
So
So-
do we have is there someone here from Holland?
No, there's not. I don't see anybody from Holland. But I was talking with Hugh Flynn with Holland last week. I talked to Trevor Gray when I need to. Like, we can certainly plop that on their lap and say, here's the subset that might affect you. Like, and that is something that we do just by communicating with them. A lot of times, you know, our priorities are not necessarily the town priorities. We don't always share priorities, so there's just the reality of
But
that.
if they know about it.
If they know about it, yeah, yeah.
Then they can make.
Most of the time, they know about it already. Like, we're just looking at it and telling them a little different perspective. You're like, you know, this is a problem, like, right? So.
That farmer's field you were talking about is on your list of 30, but that farmer may not know about it.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you let the town know, there's a lot of interaction in the town.
Yeah.
Somebody else may find out.
Well, and that's why the lake associations are so great, because they are our ears and eyes, right? They've got the email addresses, they've got the phone numbers of these people. You know, when we hand them this final product, you know, that's their like little operating manual. They're like, okay, we can reach out to these folks like, hey, did you know that they recommended you install a no-mow zone and plant some trees along this section of your street? You know, like that's
great, but Holland's a stepchild in this whole.
Oh, sure. Holland also owns like less than 1% of the area, so like that's why it is important, but it's also at the top of the watershed, and it's very limited in terms of they don't have any lake shore on. They own very little roads, and it's just not much of a drainage area. So
That's why if you let them know, possibly they can get to the landowners that own those and let them know.
yeah, sure, yeah.
It's like, I'm pretty sure I know the owner that you're referring to with that intersection. And I doubt if they even recognize that there's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, I know those people and I doubt if they recognize there's a problem.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that doesn't surprise me. I'm not going to shame anybody for that. I think that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't rectify something you don't know about.
Exactly.
And I think, you know,
Good knowledge, yeah.
so I do want to just kind of rebut. I feel as though like we're not getting much credit for performing the outreach as needed. We have 100 points on a map, and we can't possibly connect with 100 people, many of which don't even live here or have an LLC as their property entity, so we have no idea who they are. So there's a lot of hurdles to this, and we do work with the towns, and a lot of times you can only get the town's ear for an hour because they're like, FEMA's coming, we gotta go, you know. So like we are absolutely willing to be forthcoming with the information, but like there's only so much direct contact we can do, and that's when we lean on neighbors. Talk to, you know, would you Holly, you know this person, would you just kind of give them this? You know, like that's, we would like that sort of network to build, and that's kind of why we are so happy that so many people are here, because now you're all like our little splinter cells, right? Go out and prosper.
Maybe the lists by lake could go to the lake associations?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a deliverable for us, yep.
Oh, yeah.
You'll have that.
More description of
Yep.
exactly what it is you propose to do?
Yeah,
Some of these descriptions are hard to.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's just a project name with like a location, but there's a full-on description and
Maybe each lake association could get a list.
Yes.
With
Let me show you something.
identifying information.
What else you got?
So when we have it's not just, you know, 94 rows on a heinous spreadsheet. So like every one of these projects
Oh, yeah.
are going to have a very specific project summary sheet.
Yeah, that's right.
So some of these are multiple pages long, but you've got all the information you need here. You've got the project ID and name. You've got the latitude and longitude. Who owns the thing? The span number. You got the description of the issue, a picture, you know, the points that it's scored, BMP description, so potential remedies, notes and comments about permitting and cost effectiveness. You know, so that's what we are delivering. So there is this information. It is going to be a packet. And I'm sorry we didn't make that abundantly clear from the start.
It's hard to understand all of this.
There's a
lot of moving parts, definitely.
And to explain more of it too at the final plan, there'll be another.
And again, we're not done here. Like, we still got
No
4
way
months.
are we done.
This is really just to give you guys kind of a sense of what we've done and what the projects kind of look like, and then we'll have the public meeting in November. I suppose that one will be virtual, probably because a lot of you
Yes, please.
won't be
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
So we'll do a virtual meeting then. That's when we explain the final plan, and then like, what are the next steps? How do you get grant funding? We're really working hard on trying to really help explain that to people. Like, we call it implementation. So it's like, how do you get a grant to install this project? So we're working hard on getting ready, because now that we're in this post-LWAP era, like we've done 4 LWAPs, that we need to help people understand like what happens next. So it's very confusing. So please ask any questions that you need to.
Yes.
Well, I think you've done a marvelous job. I really
Thank you.
appreciate your expertise.
We are so grateful to the lake associations and the select board members because like they talk to us. Like we actually hear from them.
Yeah.
We-
You guys are all showing up. We had to put out extra chairs. This is
Many
very
people
beneficial.
to thank too, and then, but I wanted to say, Ben or Allison, is there a way you can explain this any better? Because
Yeah.
the LWAP's like an inventory, it was like trying to just at least know what's out there that needs to be dealt with.
I
Did
think
you add
of it,
anything to
I
that?
think of it as like a roadmap of all the things that you can improve over the next 5, 10 years. Like, 90 projects is a huge amount of projects. Like, honestly, 30 is probably the average. I think this in Willoughby has the most by far. Not to say that your watersheds are bad. I think you've got very thorough partners. So yeah, I like to think of it as a roadmap for things to improve over time.
But why is DEC doing this? Why did they initiate this project? How would you describe that? Like, because they were just its inventory of each sub-watershed? Or, she's laughing.
How much do you want me to talk? It's phosphorus, it's water quality, it's looking at lakes that have increasing trends, even if there's only a small amount of an increasing trend of phosphorus, and trying to mitigate that by making improvements to the watershed that stop phosphorus inputs. That's the long and short of it.
Rhonda, yeah.
Yeah, and it isn't a great motivation that basically work in the mega watershed basin, and that is considered a fair lake.
Oh,
Yes.
boy, yeah.
So, and that's what's driving the overall waste of money.
Yes.
Yeah, majorly.
Yes.
If this went over in Norton, you'd be out of that pot of money.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it'd be a different game.
Yeah, this will be a
entirely.
different
And
conversation.
we do have this sort of key stakeholder group, so there's people from both lake associations and of course our colleagues at the DEC, and so we are in a lot of communication, and I forgot to thank those people like Tom and Holly who helped me get contact with people to do Lakewise, and also Peggy and Tracy from Seymour, and of course these guys, the dream team here. So yeah, so just wanted to thank everyone again from those lake associations that helped us so much with communications, and they are very much in the know, and we'll make sure that we really make sure they learn everything they can pass on to the bigger, broader community.
And we don't go away. I mean, you got like what I would love to see is if there's like a designated person in each lake association who's just like, I'm gonna make this my little, like effort. I'm gonna filter through what we can do here and try to get other association members or neighbors or whoever to implement these practices. And like the garden tours that we unfortunately weren't able to attend because we're responding to all those damages. That's a great start. Like that's kind of like the little seed planted in the head. And whether it's got some keeping up with the Joneses, social science as a motivator, I don't care. It's good stuff, right? So
the important thing to understand, there is more grant money. This grant money was doing assessments. And then there's the next phase, which is project development. So there's specific grant money for what are the exact projects, this sort of preliminary project, having those top 5. Then there's grants for implementing, meaning just going out and installing these projects where you can hire Northwoods to put in infiltration steps at whatever, public access. So there's these different types of grants for these different phases. This is the kind of just the first phase. And we'll explain that more again at the final plan meeting, how that keeps going on.
Yeah.
You can hire us, there will be more money. Yeah.
You have a phosphorus reduction number assigned to each project. How do you come up with that phosphorus number?
So yeah, Ben can explain this better.
Ben
But,
talk.
I'll give you an example. If we were to restore a buffer along a stream that didn't have any trees on it, right? They want to incentivize buffers because the roots hold soil in place. It filters water, it traps sediment, all that stuff. You got to figure out how many acres of buffer you can plant. So the minimum is 35 feet typically. You can go 50 feet wide, you can go 100 feet wide. And so based on that acreage, you plug it into this calculator, and it does conversion, a land conversion, phosphorus reduction. So maybe it was pasture or corn, and now you're putting it into forest, right? So there's that land use conversion, and then if it's a stream and it's got a buffer, it's got this soil retention, stream bank stability type of credit, right? So there's a whole bunch of peer-reviewed research that essentially determine the numbers and turns those dials in this black box calculator. But that's how we get to a number for like a tree planting project. If we did it for stormwater, it would be based on the drainage area, the load of that drainage area, your treatment system, how efficient it is at reducing or removing pollutant load, and that spits out a number. If it's a road, it's how many linear feet of treatment you did, and whether you went from a completely non-compliant to fully compliant, or partially compliant to fully compliant. So there's a slew of different calculations. These are all available from DEC, and they are not absolute numbers. They are not precise numbers. They are comparative numbers, more or less. So it's a tool to help evaluate, because, again, you know, one project might have been, ooh, 10 kilograms of phosphorus, right? But then you see like metric tons of sediment going by. So it's grounded in science, but it's a very nuanced reality. So
you're assigning some phosphorus number
to each project scope.
to an area of size? So
To-
the larger
sometimes-
the area, the
Potential
greater the
reduction.
number?
Sometimes, yeah, well, it depends. For a buffer, absolutely. For a
Doesn't
road,
that impact
for a
the
road, it
cost?
might be linear feet. For a shoreline, it might be linear feet. So it's grounded in essentially geometry.
Okay,
So-
isn't that also affected by the type of soil?
Yeah, that's the thing. There's no dial for that. You know, maybe in in the stormwater world, depending on the infiltration rate, that dial gets turned up. If it's a beautiful gravel bed alluvial aquifer and it drains like you wouldn't believe, it's going to get turned up. If it's hard pan clay and it doesn't drain worth a damn, there's nothing. It's not going to work. So there are those sorts of dials, but again, this is like every site is different, every project is different, every factor is variable. So you know they are a comparative tool.
So you have to make an assessment of that
Oh, yeah.
particular area.
She
to
did
determine-
that 94 times.
To determine.
And then again, and then
what
again.
amount of phosphorus might be in that soil, in that area.
So that's how the Chesapeake does it. Like if you were to do a stream bank stabilization project down the Chesapeake Bay watershed, they'd ask you for linear feet, they'd ask you for bulk density of the soil, they'd ask you for average phosphorus concentration, and they do it that way. So they're not generalizing, they are site specifying. So there's different approaches out there. There's also
So the numbers you've assigned to this may be accurate, they may not be accurate. They're not absolute.
they are as accurate to each other as they can be. But again, this is just a tool. You know, it's not. But it's how the agencies account and track and justify spending money, because the TMDL, which is a regulatory tool, says you have to reduce this many kilograms. You only got this much money to do it. What's the most cost-effective project? That's kind of how all of this is shaping.
And the TMDL is the total maximum daily load. That's
Why do we have that?
to, regulate how much phosphorus is going into the watershed.
So that was part one last summer that we talked about how we're going to do this. There's like as I said, we're going to share things with you guys. There's a lot of memos, there's a lot of maps, there's a lot of appendices. Like you're going to spend, if you want, you can spend days reading all the stuff that we've done. We have 2 hours to go through it.
So if you're not a Lake Association member, which you probably should be, but if you're not, definitely get your email on my list. If you're already a Lake Association member, I'm assuming both Lake Associations will send out a summary email from what I send out to people. So you have that information. Where to go, what websites to find more information at. And we hope you join us in November. Feel free to hang out and talk flooding or ask questions and enjoy some refreshments. Thank you for coming, you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.